This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Part 1. Construction is war. Waste and variation is the enemy. General Patton declared, "The Nazis are the enemy. Wade into them, spill their blood, or they will spill yours." We may agree with Patton's sentiment, but we are not Army officers. We are, however, constantly at war with variation and waste. Patton's quote could easily be rewritten for the builder to read as follows: "Waste and variation are the enemies. Wade into them, eliminate them, or they will eliminate you." All-out warfare on anything that does not add value is the only approach that will allow us to reach our full potential. Every day is a battle against waste and variation, and believe us, we are at war. Everything in the construction process is literally trying to kill us on site or waste countless hours of time and money. Eliminate waste and variation. Waste and variation are intolerable. Sometimes it may be necessary for you to endure them during the pursuit of a more urgent goal. But if you must temporarily endure waste and variation, you should at least be sure that you never come to tolerate them. In fact, they should completely annoy you. Imagine that someone scratched the paint on your new truck while it was in the parking lot. You worked hard to save up for that truck. You knew that eventually it would get banged up as you used it, but you'd hope to be able to drive it at least for a few months in pristine condition. Now someone has carelessly opened their car door into the side of it, and a chunk of paint is missing right in the middle of the dent they left. Not only did they damage your door, but the cowards didn't even have the guts to leave a note with their insurance information. How do you feel as you imagine this scenario? Can you feel that absolute hatred for the situation? Can you capture that feeling in your mind? Good. Hold it. Let it constrict your blood vessels and turn your face red. That is how you should feel about waste and variation. That is how you should feel when you walk onto project sites that are dirty. That is how you should feel when you open portable restrooms on site and see no toilet paper. That is how you should feel when you see rebar on site laying around with no apparent purpose. Often, the reason we find ourselves battling waste and variation is due to a lack of discipline. At the beginning of World War II, the Allied forces had not yet fully proven themselves as a worthy opponent to the Nazi war machine. Sure, they had drive, desire, and motivation, but there was still little to speak of as far as discipline and experience. In the Battle of Tunisia, the Allied forces suffered incredible casualties in some of its first major battles of the war. The losses were devastating. When General Eisenhower ordered Patton into the fight, there was not much by way of discipline, order, or guiding principles. In the film Patton, George C. Scott portrayed Patton as saying, "Do you know why our boys got whooped in Tunisia? They have no discipline. They don't look like soldiers, they don't act like soldiers, and they don't train like soldiers." He was right. Patton immediately began instilling discipline into the troops and ordered standard military dress, training, salutes, and a slew of other disciplines that changed them from a ragtag bunch of boys into fighting machines. You must identify the enemy, waste and variation, and rest only when you gain victory against it. The fight should fuel you with passion and drive. You might think that sounds dramatic, but be assured that just as the lack of proper salutes among Patton's men seemed like a minor thing, tolerating waste and variation on our projects leads to major losses. Waste. Waste is anything that does not add value. There are 8 recognized wastes in our industry: excess inventory, overproduction, wasted transportation, wasted motion, needless waiting, overprocessing, defects, and not using the combined skills of the team. Consider inventory. Have you ever been on a project where all the fixtures or all the rebar were brought out only to sit, wait, get moved, damaged, reordered, move again, installed with defects, sold to an owner who no longer has a choice, and then haunt you during punch walks with everyone who tours the building? Do you remember the last time you saw a stockpile of rebar get completely covered with mud on site? Do you remember how it felt? It is all waste. The ignorance was waste, as was the inventory, damage, and reordered materials. The lost productivity, added stress, missed football games at home while you were working late, lost profits, bad performance reviews, hindered careers, and all of the difficult and contentious conversations lowered morale, lack of pride, sleepless nights, and on and on and on is all waste, and we should not tolerate it. Variation. Let's say you get started making dinner for your family. You get all the groceries, start the burners, heat the oven, mix the ingredients, and get halfway through cooking the recipe. The kids now tell you they don't want that meal. Your spouse now tells you he or she is working late and can't be home for dinner. You realize you are missing the eggs you need to make what the kids really do want, and in all the confusion, you burn the food that was on the schedule. How do you feel? What do you do? Variation is any interruption to the flow of the project. It happens when information or plans change, when commitments are not met, and when consistency and flow are compromised. Many in our industry love creating variation for our folks on site. Have you ever gotten word from the architect to make a change on site, picked up the radio, called the foreman, and changed the plan? What happens next? Think about a concrete crew on site. They have forms mobilized, rebar on the way, layout performed, concrete and finishers scheduled, and everything is ready to go. Then you get a call on the radio saying, hold off on the wall because there's a change. Or, please stop the work because we forgot an inspection. Or, we need to put the bulkhead in a different location because we are missing information about a specific blockout. Easy, right? Just stop, just change, just deal with it. We all know it isn't that simple. The form work was needed elsewhere. The schedule is now behind. We just wasted all day mobilizing forms and must take them back. We have to cancel concrete. And oh yeah, they can't reschedule for another 2 days, so we just lost another 2 days. More rebar needs to be ordered, so the office is now interrupted. The suppliers are left fighting fires. No one knows the new plan. Morale goes out the window. The engineers have to reconfigure the layout. The work tomorrow needs to be rescheduled. The rest of the week needs to be planned again. Variation is not easy, it is not fun, and it should not be tolerated. One seemingly minor change causes far more consequences than we realize, all at the expense of our morale, personal lives, and all that we care about. It might be necessary at times to please an owner or fix a mistake, but it should never be tolerated easily. It should make us cringe to create variation on site. It should embarrass us. We should shield people from it whenever possible. The ongoing battle. We are at war with waste and variation. They cause delays, ruin productivity, lead to confusion, create unsafe environments, destroy morale, and make you lose control. In all phases of the project, you should fight against waste and variation. There is no time, no circumstance, and no push so hard that we should tolerate them easily. You may be put off by the tone of the last few sections. They may have seemed a little negative or may have struck you personally. To reiterate, the criticism and condemnation is against waste and variation, not you. We should be against anything that does not bring you a positive experience on the job. You must expect more and be treated better. Sometimes we get the idea that what happens in our industry is our fault or because of us. That is not so. You are a construction professional, and we want you to have professional expectations. Everything on site, in the office, and as part of safety, quality, schedule, cost, and your team should bring you joy in your work. If it does not, please do not settle. The 3 pillars of lean are to learn the 8 wastes, take incremental steps to remove them, and to shoot before and after videos documenting your improvements. If something on your project is not remarkable, meaning remarkable for you, the workers, the owner, and for your family at home, then expect more. Leverage the team and make a change. You are important enough to do that. That is why we should all fight against waste and variation together. The art of the attack. The 2 generals. Military generals can often be pushers. When General Custer was at West Point, he constantly resisted authority and received 199 demerits in 1 year, just 1 demerit away from being held back. Custer pushed his men hard and is famously known for the Custer Charge, a tactic that he employed ruthlessly throughout the Civil War. His unit had disproportionately high casualty rates, and his men paid a high price for their success. The problem with this leadership style was shown in epic fashion when he pushed too hard at Little Bighorn. He rushed into battle without planning or knowledge and with no supportive elements. His 208 men charged into the largest gathering of Plains Indians in history. Over 2,000 warriors met his assault as he was overpowered and was forced into a defensive posture known as Custer's Last Stand. The defeat was devastating. His foolhardy attack resulted in his death and the deaths of most of his troops. A major problem with an aggressive charge is that it overcommits your manpower and resources in one specific direction without the required foreknowledge of possible outcomes. There is no guarantee the manpower and resources will provide the results necessary, and it may end in devastating defeat. An aggressive charge forgets about the art and focuses only on the attack. Conversely, consider General George McClellan. He was an extremely skilled officer and West Point graduate, thought to be a young Napoleon. However, he was hesitant and overthought his tactics in the Civil War. He often second-guessed his plans and delayed taking action, which allowed the fast-moving and aggressive South to win several key battles. He botched the Battle of Antietam, which led to his removal from command and may have been the reason why the war continued for another 2.5 years. Supers and generals. The art of attack requires you to balance the total workflow of the project. If you evaluate the balance between planning and execution, you will quickly see that 1 unit of planning is worth multiple units of execution. 1 hour of careful planning can easily save hundreds of man-hours, prevent needless material waste, avoid scheduling conflicts, and increase job site morale. There are times when a brute force approach becomes necessary, but brute force is much more efficient when applied strategically by first planning where to apply that force. Planning also allows you to know where you can advance responsibly. If a Custer-style charge is part of the plan, then so be it. It just needs to be preceded with a responsible amount of quick planning. We must also be wary of overplanning and making excuses to delay work. Just as McClellan's hesitancy to act led to devastating defeats for the North, delays on work sites caused by overplanning can cost the company money and waste our employees' time. Sun Tzu said in The Art of War that though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays. We must not be hasty. We cannot be stupid, ignorant, or unlearned in the art of planning and organization to the expense of our men and the cause we are pursuing. But we also cannot sustain long delays. Waiting, when unnecessary, brings with it many unintended consequences that are not always easily seen but are heavy prices to pay. The art of attack requires finesse while maintaining an offensive posture throughout the project at the right times and places, not thoughtlessly pushing forward or fearfully delaying work. Both result in waste. The two supers, a story from the field. I am not canceling the concrete placement. Once I do that, the guys will think I'll cancel it every time. This is what one superintendent passionately told his team when asked what to do about a placement that was falling behind. He and I were 2 of 3 superintendents on an $80 million commercial building project. This superintendent was a pusher, and production was all that mattered to him. He would drive his crews almost to exhaustion while working overtime, Saturdays, and holidays. This came at the expense of quality, safety, organization, and cleanliness. Deck placements were often missing embeds, columns were placed 2.5 inches out of skew, and walls were missing reinforcing because placements were made in haste. His intemperate pushing came at the expense of his people, product quality, and job morale. Though this superintendent was always charging in and pushing his workers, he never understood the art of attack. The other superintendent I worked with was the opposite. He was all art and no attack. He was analytical and hesitant. In his mind, everything had to be perfect before he began his projects. He was constantly late and passive with scheduling trade partners. I always noticed he was toiling away, perfecting non-essential parts of the project. On one particular part of a project, I needed to know how my scopes and schedules fit in with his, so I put his plan together for him. His indecisive overthinking not only put his scopes behind, but eventually caused the entire project to fall behind 3 months. The project superintendent eventually assigned half of his scope to me. After all, I had planned it for him. Clearly, these 2 superintendents were diametric opposites. They never understood the art of attack. I was in charge of the largest scope of the project. I completed my scopes of work on time, ahead of schedule, and in support of all other scopes for the building. The intricacies of my scope were orchestrated to work around the other scopes with little impact. The system's installation was masterminded to begin with an early start, even though it took some creative engineering. This allowed building systems to be up and running on time. The team was never waiting on my scopes to be completed. This was a result of preparation and strategy, not hasty pushing. It came from thinking, not working people harder. It came from decisive action. It came from the art of attack, which is a strategic and balanced approach to advancing to victory. Time of exposure. General George S. Patton warned against entropy when he declared that every soldier should realize that casualties in battle are the result of two factors. First, effective enemy fire, and second, the time during which a soldier is exposed to that fire. The enemy's effectiveness in fire is reduced by your fire or by night attacks. The time you are exposed is reduced by the rapidity of your advance. Every builder should realize that casualties to our success are the result of two factors. First, the effective waste and variation on plans, and second, the amount of time we allowed to be lost to waste and variation. The negative effects of entropy can only be attacked by a robust and effective effort to organize and overcome. Exposure to waste and variation is reduced by the rapidity of your advance. Something will always go wrong, and the longer we wait, the more chances there are to allow that to happen. Every day we wait, materials go missing or become damaged. Every day we wait, people become busier with other pressing matters and disengage with the needs of the project. Every day we wait, we are missing the opportunity to fix problems that surely exist elsewhere. Sun Tzu advised, "Rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness, make your way by unexpected routes, and attack unguarded posts." As builders, we take the unexpected routes by strategically leading a team to completion. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness by solving problems before they're allowed to alter your destiny. Never allow the enemy, waste and variation, to grab hold. Take decisive action and reduce your team's exposure to enemy fire. Setting air handlers, a story from the field. I recall a large project where we were trying to start up the air handlers to air condition the building with cool air. This was critical to the success of installing finishes. It was August, and the projected on-air dates were anticipated the following June. I began drawing the plans for these expensive machines a total of 10 months in advance. I was criticized for planning that early, but I knew things could go wrong. I knew roadblocks would try to hinder our progress. I knew enemy fire would be upon us and that we needed to advance where we could. Therefore, the massive chilled water piping installation was scheduled early at my request. The electrical startup date was scheduled 5 weeks early in anticipation of delays. The water tie-ins were moved up. Everything was moving consistently toward the target dates in a slightly faster but responsible pace. All this planning paid off. The chilled water lines ended up being delayed due to material fabrication and were completed only 2 weeks before we needed that critical 42-degree water. The permanent power required an additional month to energize due to delays with the bureaucratic, government-sanctioned power company. The piping took an additional 2 weeks to flush before systems could be operational. Did all of that slow us down? Did it prevent us from hitting our target date? Absolutely not. Why? Because contingencies were built in, and the driving pace with which we built the separate systems came together at the right time. We did not wait. We did not second-guess ourselves. We did not assume the best-case scenario would happen. We attacked. We reduced the time we were exposed to enemy fire by increasing the rapidity of our advance. Avoid the defensive position. Defense is stagnation. There may be times when an army, nation, team, or individual needs to remain in a defensive posture, but it is not an effective way to lead. Granted, if the options are ruin or a defensive posture, choose the defensive posture, but regroup to attack once circumstances allow. There is no safety or victory in staying on the defensive. As Patton observed, nobody ever defended anything successfully. There is only attack and attack and attack some more. Historically, defenses eventually fall to ruin. Only in attack do we keep our enemy on the run and preserve our forces. Only on the move do we stay safe. When stagnating or on the defense, we become the object of attack. We make no progress, and our fall is inevitable. If we must be in a defensive position, we need to use that time to redirect and plan a counterattack. Once a group is on the defensive, they are handicapped. Consider the Nazis in World War II. Their blitzkrieg tactics of attack enabled them to quickly conquer most of Europe. The tactics were so effective that France was conquered in 6 weeks, and Denmark was conquered in a mere 6 hours, with a handful of other countries falling somewhere in between. However, once they found themselves as occupiers, the Nazis had to change their behavior from one of aggressive offense to that of defense. They had to defend 1,600 miles of coastline from the impending Allied invasion. The prospect of defending such a large area brought huge problems, everything from not having the steel and concrete they needed to build defenses to not having the manpower to garrison them. When Patton had them on the defensive, they had to help stragglers, destroy equipment and ammunition, obtain mobile supplies, regroup, and try to rally time and again. So, not only did they need to carry on the normal necessities of war, but they also had to reestablish the critical momentum Patton's army already had. Behind the 8-ball. When we sink into a defensive position on our project sites, we find ourselves behind the 8-ball. In the game of 8-ball pool, the black 8-ball is the last ball that a player sinks into a pocket. Being behind the 8-ball refers to times when the cue ball is positioned behind the 8-ball and cannot get a direct shot at the other balls. In this situation, there is no good move available. Failure to plan will put the team behind the 8-ball and keep them from advancing on the project. Consider a project with no advanced safety planning or implementation. Once someone gets hurt, the project is unmanageable. The team does not have any time to advance or overcome. They can only react to circumstance. Likewise, when a team has allowed a project to become unclean and disorganized, they cannot instantly implement a habit of cleanliness and organization because bad habits have already been formed. With all the time spent going back and cleaning up after themselves, they do not have the time to prevent future infractions. Firefighting. Being behind the 8-ball puts the team in firefighting mode. Everything is an emergency. Everyone's job becomes putting out fires. A firefighter at work is not trying to avoid water damage. He isn't hesitant about breaking down a door. He isn't focused on anything other than putting out that fire. When he enters a burning building, he hacks through the roof, drenches the home, and damages anything in his way to extinguish the flames. And in some cases, it is deemed safer to just let the house burn down. The same is true in life and work. When superintendents fall into firefighting mode, there is no room for preservation or prevention. When waste and variation are destroying our future work, the clock is ticking. We cannot sit down to strategize, and our knee-jerk attempts to solve problems often end up causing more damage to the project. Losing. Not winning or advancing demoralizes a team and renders them ineffective. If the defensive position is not enough of a disadvantage, the demoralization of your team will eventually tear it apart. Humans need to have a win from time to time to feel effective. No pep talk, sermon, or rally can build the team up the way a tangible win can. Consider the story of Constantinople and its eventual fall. In 324 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine chose the existing city of Byzantium as the new capital of the Roman Empire. Rome was no longer fit to be the capital. He chose this city because its position offered easy access to trade routes, and it was closer to the frontier of the empire, but mostly because it was easily defended. He named it Constantinople and built defenses that remained impenetrable for over 1,000 years. The residents of the city relied on their location and fortifications as a defense, and over time became complacent. After centuries as one of the finest cities in the world, Constantinople became the target of ongoing attacks from neighboring civilizations. Eventually, weakened by political and religious infighting, economic downturns, and the plague, the great city finally fell in 1453 to the Sultan Mehmed II, leader of the Ottoman Empire. This pattern has replayed itself over and over throughout history. When cultures, companies, or people aren't actively and regularly winning, they are on their way to losing, even if it takes some time. Becoming distracted. The primary focus of any leader should be strategizing. Battles are often won or lost before the first gun fires, in large part due to effective planning. When leaders are forced to focus on putting out fires, they are taken from their primary role of planning the next involvement. Once the team is in emergency mode without a clear plan, the unit is leaderless. Once reactive behavior takes over, there is no control. This is true for leaders in any position.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues. And help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.